Hi, I'm Dr. William Starsiak, and in this video, I'm going to talk about how our lifestyle and our microbiome affect how easy it is for us to maintain a healthy weight. For a long time, doctors have been saying that the only things that matter for weight loss are how many calories we're taking in and how much exercise that we're doing. But there's been a lot of research that show there's a few other things at play. So one of them that many people have begun to appreciate, but not everyone, is when we eat our calories. If we eat our calories in the morning, they tend to increase our metabolic rate so that we have more energy during the day, but then we're going to use a lot of those calories in the activity of the day. We don't tend to store them. So it's a double bonus. Increase metabolism, avoid storing as many calories. However, most people in the United States have their biggest meal at dinner time. And this is true in Europe as well. But Europeans tend to have smaller breakfasts on average, like when you look at, say, countries like France or Italy. Now, when we eat at nighttime, we have this influx of calories, this influx of glucose and fats and proteins, but we're not doing anything. We're laying around. So that glucose gets stored as fat. And excess fats are going to get stored as well. Proteins can get turned into things that can be stored as fat. So the best way, if we want to maintain an ideal healthy weight, dinner should be our smallest meal, lunch should be our biggest meal, and breakfast should be our second biggest meal. Now, there is good evidence that shows intermittent fasting is helpful in losing weight. It's not a tremendous amount of weight that research shows you can lose with it, but it is significant. And what most people are doing that I find in my practice when they're intermittent fasting, when they decide to come to it on their own, is they're dropping breakfast. The better thing to do would be to drop dinner. Not just for weight reasons, also for cognitive reasons, because research has shown that one of the lifestyle changes that can reverse mild cognitive impairment is increasing the time between dinner and bedtime and the time between dinner and breakfast. So if we just cut out dinner altogether and we simply eat breakfast and lunch and then we do our intermittent fasting until breakfast the next day, we're giving our body a ton of time to process all of the food that we've taken in during the day. That's not just good for our weight, but that's also good for our cognition. Now, another element that's going to influence how easy it is for us to maintain our weight is the amount of muscle mass we have. Fat is very cheap to maintain. Muscle is very expensive to maintain. So by building muscle, we can actually increase our basal metabolic rate. So even if we're eating a little bit more, it goes towards supporting that muscle as opposed to being stored as fat. Now, we need to be careful if we're taking on weight training not to go too far too fast, because we can injure ourselves and then actually put ourselves behind because of that. So it's good to start slow, start with lower weights, get used to the exercises and gradually build up. Maybe work with a personal trainer. Or if you're dealing with a lot of different injuries, you could always start with using a high-fem technology like the M-Sculpt Neo, which actually will grow the muscle for you where there's no risk of injury. And we have that here at the office. There's a lot of offices around the country that have it. You can look in your local region to see if anyone has it, if you're interested in that sort of technology. Now, the really exciting recent evidence is around the effect of the microflora on how easy it is for someone to lose weight. So for a long time, a lot of patients have been saying, I look at the people around me and it's easier for them to lose weight. I feel like I'm doing everything I should be doing, but I'm just not losing weight. And doctors are trained to think, oh yeah, right. Law of thermodynamics, matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Like, you are eating if you are generating more fat. That will, and some doctors will be very extroverted about that idea. Some doctors will just be patient and think about that idea quietly. But we have new evidence that suggests that for many people this is true, that it is harder for them to lose weight because of their microflora. So before we talk about that study, let's just rewind to an older study. This looked at mice. There were mice that were bred to be naturally lean, mice that were bred to be obese, And then there were these other mice that were bred to have no bacterial flora at all. So they took feces from the obese mice, and they took feces from the lean mice, and they gave half of the no bacteria mice the obese feces and half the lean feces. And then those mice became obese that got the obese feces and became lean that got the lean feces. So what this is suggesting is that there are bacteria living in the intestines that affect how many calories we're bringing in. Because when we eat food, some of the food doesn't get fully digested and we actually end up excreting it. So any food we don't absorb becomes potential food for bacteria. Now some bacteria may break that food up so that we can absorb it. Other bacteria may eat that food themselves and produce other beneficial molecules that we then absorb. So there are bacteria that do that with gluten, and they make butyric acid. And this butyric acid is actually very helpful for us. So we can kind of easily see how our microflora could affect how many calories we're extracting from our food. So this most recent study looked at a group of people, and they were classed based upon the diversity of their microflora. So the ones with a really good diversity were in one group, the ones with a poor diversity were in another group, and they put them on the same diet. And what they found is that people with good flora lost weight on this calorie deficit diet. It was a 500 calorie deficit. People with bad microflora didn't lose this much weight or didn't lose weight at all. So what it really clearly showed is that the flora is involved in one's ability to lose weight. So what we can take from this is that we need to cultivate a good flora. Now it's not enough to just take probiotics. There are some really good probiotics out there, and it's good to take those. Ideally you take probiotics that have colonizing strains in them so that you don't have to take them daily, but you can just take them periodically whenever you need a refresh. But really, what's going to maintain your flora over time is the foods that you're eating. You need to give the bacteria the food that they like. Now, in the Western world, we've only known we have bacteria living in our intestine for about 100 years. But if you go back to ancient India, texts that are 3,000 plus years old, they describe these bacteria living on and in our body. They call them krimni. K-R-I-M-N-I is how it's spelled when it's put in English, but obviously this was a Sanskrit word. You know, they didn't have an alphabet like us. It was a different sort of alphabet. So they knew about these back then, and they described how to properly take care of them. So what do these bacteria eat? They eat fibers, fruits, vegetables, nuts, whole grains, beans. These are all fiber-rich foods. These are all the foods that doctors in the know and nutritionists in the know tell us that we should be eating. And they just happen to also nourish the good bacteria. They're also a source of good bacteria. Whenever we're eating raw foods, and we shouldn't eat raw food year-round. Fall and winter, when they're not being harvested, and when it's cold outside, we should have warm foods. It's more balancing for our body. This also comes from Ayurveda. But during the spring and summer, when we're harvesting these raw foods, that's one of our big sources of probiotics. It's from our environment. So the key is, if we eat foods in the season they're harvested in the region that we live in, we're going to take care of our bacterial flora. We're going to cultivate a good flora. If we're involved in our environment in some way, we're contacting our environment, we're going for hikes in the woods, we're doing a little bit of gardening here and there, even just being outside in nature, we're going to be breathing in bacteria. They get, when we step or wind blows, they get pushed into the air, and then they get on our skin, they get in our mouth, and they're our friends. So we shouldn't be so afraid of our environment. It actually is a source of a lot of beneficial bacteria. Now, something that I could see happening in the future, I'm just going to put it out there into YouTube land. Maybe someone will run with it. Kind of like, if you've heard of Cameo, where you can get a celebrity to call you up and or call up a loved one, leave a message for them. Well, what if I could say, hey, I really want to have Tom Brady's microflora. And then Tom Brady could set a price for his microflora. He could make donations, into this, or he'd be paid for it, but he could provide this company with it'd have to be his feces, and then you could be sent a kit for home enemas. So you could do home enemas with this kind of particular microflora. And I jest a little bit. It wouldn't have to be tied to an individual person, but I do think some people would be into it. Like, what if you could get, I don't know, Kim Kardashian's, or you could do pick your celebrity's microflora. Maybe we'll see something like this in the future, because currently we don't really have a non-prescription, commercially available option for really comprehensively addressing the microflora. Most of the probiotics we have, they're topping out at tens of bacteria. The diversity in our intestines is tremendous. It's not just bacteria. We also have important viruses that are in there too. There are also going to be some fungi that live in there as well. And not all of these are going to be harmful. There's a lot of research that still needs to be done. Incidentally, there are some people who have yeast and they produce alcohol, and they constantly have an illegal blood alcohol level, illegal for driving, because they're fermenting in their own intestines. So we know we have yeasts living in there. But so right now, the best thing we can do therapeutically for people are these fecal transplants from people we know to be really healthy. And this is what's done in Clostridium difficile, which is this profuse, watery, foul-smelling diarrhea that usually is acquired inside of hospitals. And that's really the only case in medicine where we're doing these transplants, these fecal transplants. So hopefully in the future, we see this open up to where maybe we don't even have to get transplants from another person, but maybe this ideal bacterial flora is started by some sort of donation of ideal feces, but then it's just cultivated in some sort of lab setting where we can just do a home enema, or there are even very slow dissolvable pills that you can take these pills orally and they don't dissolve until they get deeper in your intestines. Give it 10 years, there'll probably be weight loss solutions for that. Thank you very much for taking time to watch my video. I hope you found it informative. Subscribe to my channel so you can catch them when they come out. Also be sure to like this video. Have a great day.